Hi, guys. How are you? Happy Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend. And today's training is going to be on limits and boundaries. And these are so important. And yet, so often, parents don't know, number one, what a limit and boundary is. Number two, how you set them up. How do they work? How do I create them in my home? So, first, I'm going to tell you guys why you need limits and boundaries. And second, I'm going to talk a little bit about setting them up. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, let me tell you the definition of a boundary and the definition of a limit. A boundary is a line of what you think and what your child thinks. A limit of a subject or activity, a dividing line. So, draw a line in the sand, as they say. A limit is a point where something does not extend beyond. Okay. Like one more. I want one more drink. I want one more story. I want one more hug, one more kiss, like they do at night. When you say, no, honey, it's lights out, no more one mores, that is setting a limit. Okay. So it's the furthest extent of one's personal, physical, mental existence. All right. That's another reason. That's like you can set up a personal limit. Personal boundaries are also things you can set up, not just for your family. So basically, it's a restriction of something you give permission for. Okay. My permission goes only so far. All right. So why do we need limits and boundaries in our lives? Like I said, there are personal boundaries we need to set up for ourselves. Saying no, not saying yes to everything. When we're busy and we're overwhelmed, we don't want to constantly say yes, 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 and put more stress on us. You have to set up a limit and say, you know what? Honestly, I'd love to help you, but I can't right now. I am just packed full. So it sets up safety and security. It gives your children responsibility for their own actions. And okay, so I'm able to do this, but I'm not able to do that. I'm going to take responsibility for honoring that. Self-discipline, thinking before you act, which is like a big goal of all parenting strategies, is to get each of you to think and consider what is going on, what you're saying before you say it, before you do it. They build confidence, they build self-esteem, they build self-worth, makes someone mindful of not only themselves, but of the person setting that limit. Helps you regulate emotions. There's so many things. We can think outside the box. What can we do within this limit? Or is it now time to negotiate and extend the limit? So one thing it makes children realize is that the world does not center around themselves. Children are born, especially early on in toddlerland, expecting that the world will focus on them. And as we grow up, we realize and we learn that it does not focus around them. We are part of a bigger picture. And limits and boundaries help kids realize that. Now, when you set them up, you have to decide, this is the limit, this is the boundary, I'm firm on this. Be a person of integrity. What you say is what you do. What you do is connected to your core values. Let me give you an example of a very common boundary, or a very common, let's call it a boundary. It's a better boundary. We don't play ball in the house. We can play ball outside. Do we remove the entire concept of playing with a ball because we don't want it thrown in the house? No. Playing with a ball is vitally important for the development of your child, believe it or not. Their coordination, their balance, throwing a ball, super important to teach your kids. But the boundary is we do not throw balls in the house. We only throw balls outside. And that you have to follow through with. So put in place the boundaries and the limits that you will follow through with. Don't put boundaries and limits in place that you have no commitment towards. If you're not going to follow through, don't even put it in place, okay? Because if you put a limit or a boundary in place and you don't follow through with it, your children will think, well, it doesn't really matter what's here because mom and dad's not following through with it. Limits and boundaries give children comfort and security, and they help them know that someone actually cares about them. If a child of a very young age is allowed to go outside and roam the streets till 11 o'clock, and somebody says to them, what are you doing out at this time? They will respond, well, nobody cares. And literally, nobody cares. That's what they think. Nobody cares what they do, so they can do whatever they want. When you set boundaries and limits, it shows a child you care about them. It gives them safety, it gives them security, and it shows them love. So make sure you're putting them in place. They are necessary. Be consistent with them, whatever you put in place. And if you have a parenting partner living in the home with you, make sure the two of you are on the same page with putting these limits and boundaries in place so that you're not going one way and the other going the other way, because then your child will only learn to play each other. Okay? What are some areas where you can put limits and boundaries in place? Screen time, clearly an area that most parents need to put limits and boundaries in place. Bedtime, nap time, morning time, homework time, summertime. So it's not just a free-for-all. Playtime, mealtime, these are all places that you can set up limits and boundaries. They're basically what rules in the home that you want to abide by. Communication. Do you want your children to use manners? Do you use manners? Time. Older kids, what is their curfew? That is a limit and boundary. Follow through. The key to setting up a limit boundary is actually spending time following through with that limit or boundary. Is it always fixed in stone? No. That there's an ability as your children get older to negotiate if necessary. You don't want to negotiate every time. A curfew, as your children get to be teenagers, they may get to be a little older. They may have something they need to attend. And with that, they may say, I'm usually home at 10. Can I come home at 10:30 this evening? And it may be fine with you. And then you give them the allowance to spend an extra half hour and be home an extra half hour later. That is negotiating, and that is showing them that I believe in you. You show good responsibility. Yes, that's a good way to reward your child. Okay. Personal safety, putting on a seatbelt, holding hands when you walk across the street. This is something that's non-negotiable. There's not something like, oh, I'm sorry, 2-year-old. Sure, you go run across the street. That's fine. You don't have to hold my hands. No, a 2-year-old has to hold your hand. Non-negotiable. A seatbelt must be put on. A car seat must be sat in. So safety boundaries and limits are non-negotiable. They are for their safety. So think about where you can put in a boundary or limit. Think about how you're going to do it. You're in the Tranquility Tribe. If you have questions or you're not so sure of how to do it, reach out to me. We can set up a call. You also, if you're in our inner circle, you have a full masterclass on boundaries and limits. So look in your masterclass vault and look up the Boundaries and Limits masterclass. It also talks about setting up consequences and enforcing them. Family meetings that are used to set them up and enforce. So I hope this helped. I hope this clarified a little. Limits and boundaries, I leave you with this. Limits and boundaries are not being mean. They're actually showing a lot of love. Families without limits and boundaries, that's being mean because you are setting up your child for failure. And you are stressing them out because children that don't have that comfort, don't have that feeling that someone cares, are just running amok and they get stressed out from the chaos that they live with. So set them up. Any questions, reach out to me. And in the meantime, as always, I wish you days filled with peace, love, tons of laughter. I'll see you here next week for our 10 a.m. Training. This Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time is our masterclass. And our masterclass is a really important one because it's all about ways that your child feels judged, criticized, and ridiculed. It's an important masterclass all about communication and how your child's perspective affects that communication. All right, guys. So join me Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. As a member of the Tranquility Tribe, all of you, whether you're in the circle or not, get to join the live masterclass. It'll be live on Zoom, and it will be announced in our group. Okay? You guys have a great week, an intentional week. Be peaceful, be calm. I'll see you here next time. Bye, everyone.